kick off the session with something very basic. Why is customer retention critical to business from a perspective of, versus acquiring customers?
See, I come from a blue blood FMCG background, and I don't know of a single business which makes profit which doesn't have a hardcore loyal base of customers who are buying frequently month after month. As long as a business is in acquisition mode, you are going to continue to burn and you are going to continue to have a red bottom line. That's the mathematical equation that is right out there. The moment you have a loyal base of customers, I think first thing that happens is the organic word of mouth starts spreading, and every customer brings to you one or two more neighbors. Generally, that's how we look at it. That comes free of cost to you, right? And this is what feeds into the bottom line, which you can then reinvest back into the brand building or whatever you want to, invest back in. So, without a customer retention, which is what the language we say, I think the common way of looking in FMCG is you need to have a loyal base of customers who are buying you frequently. They're upselling you. They're spreading the good word about your brand. So without that, a business is not going to be sustainable at all.
And Shauna, you have a very different type of customer base, if I may. Yours are more agent focused because they are the ones who actually bring in your customers.
Yeah.
So where does that stand in the sense that the kind of strategy that you would employ for your agents versus your customers?
Yeah. So I think just to bring everyone up to speed, we are an insurtech platform, and while we sell policies various kinds to the end customer, we primarily do it through the agents, and we could call it a B2B2C model, right? So these are the guys who we literally kind of nurture and we handhold them through every stage of their journey, and these are the guys who are getting the business. They're the final mile. They are the brand advocates and also the acquirers of the brand. That's the number one. Number two is these guys also come in with their existing set of customer sets, right? I mean, when these people move, they tend to move with a whole bunch of people along with them. So these are, so the guys who are productive, you'd want to, really guard them with your life. So if they are your core base, and you have to do that because it's sustainable for the business, like he was mentioning. Without doing that, with having a leaky bucket, you can't run a sustainable business.
But how challenging is it in the sense that you have a very how do I say it? It's a captive kind of you have that's the number of agents that you have, and there is going to be attrition. There is going to be a hop over. So how exactly would you manage that?
So a couple of things. I think one of the first realities of the insurance business is these are annualized business, right? I mean, they are renewal-driven business. People come in annually. So it's not just about getting their business the first time, but it's also about how that credit is passing on year after year, and how does an agent build a sustainable book of business over a period of time. So the first thing to actually tell these people are that while we may be a platform which is empowering them to sell, it's equally important that we're helping them retain their customers through technology, right? We are not, as a platform, going to take away their customer, which has happened in so many other industries, where agents have been kind of left high and dry over a period of time. But that's the market reality. So one is that, the promise that the renewal books are going to be on. The second is there are a lot of things which is provided to guys within an ecosystem, and these are, you could call it snippets of loyalty or things like that, but it's beyond the cash incentives, so as to say. How can a brand provide a digitized, branded ecosystem to the guy who is final mile? They're actually lone warriors who could be present in any corner of the country, right? So for example, we have 300,000 agents in more than 17,000 pin codes across the country. So someone, far away has the same access to a platform, choice, price, offerings as someone sitting in, say, a Mumbai or a Delhi. So I think a combination of these is what helps us back.
Right. Avadhoot, how much is like understanding your consumer base, understanding their expectations, core part of building the tailoring your strategy?
Yeah. No, and maybe I'll connect both the questions that you had. I think uh, one of the things very clearly, I've been in this space now for about 10 plus years in the marketing tech space. We've always seen more than 80-90% of the budgets are invested in the acquisition side of things, right, in the ad tech space. And technically the conversions that you get from some of that is as low as 1.5%, and most of the other aspects are kind of ad based, right? And internally we call this term called as goop, right? Which is a combination of Facebook and Google. You're essentially giving all the money away to these two large brands who are making all the money, instead of focusing on and spending money on getting your customers hooked onto you as a brand, basically. And which is where to your earlier point on why investments in retention are important, or why a retention strategy is even important. Or to the second point that you mentioned, I think very clearly understanding the customer and the signals that the customer gives is crucial. Just to give you a very, very simple example, right? I think users, when they're on your website, on your app, they leave a lot of digital footprints, but how much do you really utilize some of those footprints into making sure that you're actually communicating in a very personalized way? Like a simple thing we're doing for Pizza Hut Malaysia, is this whole thing around helping them understand that what is the favorite dessert for, let's say Avadhoot as a user, or what is his preferred meal time, so that I can communicate and engage with him at that given time, or what's his favorite pizza. Is he a vegetarian, non-vegetarian? And these are some of the things which you can actually derive from signals that the customer is leaving with you. He'll not explicitly end up telling you some of these things, but these are things you'll have to derive from interactions he's having with you as a brand, and then make sure you communicate accordingly, and which is where knowing the customer and understanding footprints he lives, I think is very crucial.
True. In fact, for D2C business, I think it's like it's a lot. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that it's a lot more challenging, purely because the way the markets are changing, the way the customer behavior is changing, right? And how, like, for example, COVID had an impact on customer consumer behavior. So everything has, the socioeconomic impact that it has, all of that together, and then the fact that you have to be constantly monitoring what is happening. That's I believe I would believe that it's quite a challenging proposition.
See, I've just joined Pilgrim. Pilgrim is a personal care D2C brand. So we have skincare, hair care, body care, very similar to what you see with HUL and Reckitt Benckises of the world. FMCG space has always been tricky. D2C minus D2C, it is the consumers who have always been looking for something more. But my fundamental belief when it comes to consumer products is, the magic lies in the product, and that product is co-created with the consumer always. We have created, some of our products are actually co-created with the consumer. Let's say, sometime back the team was dabbling with this idea that, so we are in serums business, right? Skincare serum and then hair serums and all of that. And they were like, how about lips? A lot of women seem to be having a problem with, let's say, darkened lips. Even men have that. And so we ran a quiz online, and then we asked them what is it that they're looking for. In fact, the consumers gave us the flavors that they would like, the kind of experience that they would like to have, and we created a blueberry strawberry sort of a lip serum which is doing really well. So I think one of the ways to keep tab on what's changing is to keep tab on the consumer research or consumer feedback, whichever way you look at it. In FMCG industry, there are these large scale researches that you do. But now that I am on this side of digital, within 2 days you can reach to God knows how many thousands of customers, and they give you data point that you actually would be needing. So this space, I think you have to be comfortable with this discomfort of changing. That's how the FMCG space has always been.
Right. And you did mention, and we spoke earlier about how, there are various phases. Like you have an acquisition, you are in an acquisition phase, and then you have a phase where you actually focus more on retention. So if you could.
Yeah. See, we are just a 3 years old organization. So right now, and I think for the certain future, we will have to have a lot of customers who should try us before. But having said that, it's not that we have abandoned the retention strategy. We have kept our system ready for retention. So say, for example, we have already planned 8 to 10 journeys, consumer journeys, already pinpointing how they are coming, which product are they trying, what is their frequency of buying, what kind of basket they are buying. So we are keeping a system ready. But having said that, our deployment of resources right now is going to be on top of funnel because what we believe is that there comes a point in consumer product journey where a neighbor tells the other neighbor that they really like it, and unless I take my brand to that stage, the retention between the smaller pool is not going to really make a material sense to me. In short, right now the stage at which Pilgrim is, our acquisition strategy is going to go full throttle, but the system is being set and it will keep evolving on the retention front as we speak.
Got it. So, Saunak, what about you? Like, how exactly do you personalize, or do you kind of touch base with your agents? And is it much easier to have that small pool of agents to touch base with on a regular basis, as opposed to trying to understand what your customer expectations? Because I'm assuming your agents will know what your customers want.
We do both actually, but specifically from the agent point of view, it's important to segment them and understand who is in that different buckets, so as to say, right? So I mean, once upon a time there was Pareto, and now there is a very, very deep Pareto. I think it's not even 80-20 anymore. It depends on multiple industries. So to understand people, sometimes it's about who is active the previous month, or who is active 3 months before. So you have P3M, P6M, those kind of buckets which start coming in. And it's important to understand and predict their behaviors through data, based on what they've said. If a guy who has been active over a period of time is not, there's a high chance that they're going to bounce for whatever reason. And what could be an intervention point which we could add at that level. So we follow an omni-channel strategy which allows us to reach these guys and engage them on a regular basis. But the most important part of that puzzle is really our app, which is it's not just a sales app, but it's an engagement app. It's a learning and development app. It's also an engagement app for an agent to be able to reach out to their customer, right? So we empower them with pieces of content, with digital code creations, with comparisons, and being able to share with their customers on, say, a WhatsApp or a Facebook or so things like that. It's about giving them a branded ecosystem which they could continue to leverage over a period of time, and about getting them more customer insights and feeding it back into their system, saying that, hey, this customer of yours may be wanting to kind of go ahead with that. So it's a combination of these few things which we do. And again, this depends on who is at which stage. There are a bunch of people who we would know that, I wouldn't say lost cause, but maybe we could touch base with them in a slightly diverse period of time, as against someone who I just can't let.
And you did mention about, it not being just about money. I mean, like incentivizing is not just about.
Yes.
So what else do you do in terms of strategy? What else do you do And I'm talking like some welfare schemes. What exactly?
So, see, apart from the incentives, which is a large part of why people come in to the business in the first place, right? They need a sustainable source of income. They need a regular source of income. They need to understand that it's not just a fly-by-night kind of thing or just a small way to make money, but it's a sustainable way to do that. But, as I said, they are, far away guys who are lone warriors. How could you give them an identity? How could you give them a branded ecosystem? For example, when we did a lot of research, we realized a lot of these guys create, they probably even have heard of Canva or things like that. They just go online and with very crude mechanism, just have a Happy New Year with something, and they just put their names in a very bad looking font. Just providing them a branded ecosystem saying, hey, this is coming from Turtlemint and this is coming from me with my email ID and phone number, and you could be in touch with me at this. I'm just giving a very simplistic example. So that's one of the things. The second is the data, enrichment and, kind of handholding them, understanding their customers better, help in renewals and claims. That's one more thing, right? Because as a guy, we are interested in them going and, taking care of the business, whereas the entire aspect of the hassles of insurance, so as to say, is taken care of by us as a company. And we are empowering them through that.
Yeah. And just to maybe add to that, I think the whole point that incentives and discounts and offers, I think almost every brand today gives in some form or the other. But I think Gartner talks about this whole concept called as help, right? How as a brand, you're helping your end user or your consumer, and not necessarily always behaving in a transactional manner, where you're just pushing him for a sale. Like very, very, very simple examples, right? Like, let's say Make My Trip during the COVID days. Most of the guys would have ideally uninstalled the Make My Trip app, right? Because travel was almost not happening. But that didn't happen with me as a consumer, because they actually gave us an option to figure out what are the policies to travel in different countries, different states of India, which was a utility they built for their users. Technically has something to do with their business, but they didn't have to do it. They could just say, go and Google it and you'll find it, right? But because of that, it helped them retain a lot of their users and not run again those ad campaigns to, drive installs and stuff like that. So I think places where you can help the user in form of small utilities which are connected to your business can actually, be a very, very good help for you to retain users. But think of it this way: what if you could just, run a campaign where to a person you already have a music composed, you put in two names, and the music that actually is composed gets personalized for the name that is inputted into the system, and it's fairly easy to do some of these things. And there is a call that gets triggered to, let's say, my wife or my girlfriend's number from the brand, and it essentially has very less cost. But the fact that is what will get the consumer to remember you as a brand, which is where you're helping him in a cause instead of just giving him another 20% discount, which I think most brands would have done.
I completely agree. In fact, while we are on it, I also want to kind of touch upon this. How much communication is too much communication? Personalized offers, personalized, discounts, etc. Great, wonderful. But where do we draw the line?
So, and that's a great question. I think with almost every communication or messaging channel opening up to brands, right from email, SMS to WhatsApp, and notifications have always been there. I think over bombardment is causing to that whole attention recession, right? You're actually not getting the needed attention from your users, and which is where there's no set frequency as such, but the only ask or request would be you send less and send relevant. So technically, don't even send if you think this is not a relevant message to the end consumer, because it is going to lead to the user actually uninstalling your app, unsubscribing from your list, or having a negative impression about you. So I think, I know, right? I've been on the other side. Sending the message gets more traffic, gets more conversions. So I know how it feels when it's end of the month. You want to get to the number and you just want to send it out to everyone. So, but it has a lot more adverse effects in the long run, and I think sending anything more than a couple of messages a week is just too much, possibly.
So, I mean, Konark, this actually, in fact, is a lot relevant to you because there are two things. One is your D2C. Second thing is you're very new. So, you want to be on the top of mind of your consumer. How exactly would you tackle this?
So, like I was mentioning, we have certain rules. We call something like RFM model. Whereas there is recency, there is frequency, and then whatever the kind of budget that they have spent with us. Now, somebody who's not been recent with us, let's say more than 6 months, we don't even invest. Then we'll put them in the other funnel of, let's say, we treat them as new customers completely. They are out of it. Depending on which consumer journey they are in, we also at an overall level, we tackle the number of emails that should go. We have something interesting. So we have what we call skincare quiz, where we try to figure out, what are their concerns regarding their skin and all of that. Now, whenever we have some sort of a, some offer on the product that they are more likely to buy or have they purchased, that is the most, relevant piece of info, and they don't mind that. So there are two aspects to bombarding them with the message. See, one is those impersonal discounting mails. Other is that you also shape your content in a conversational manner, of course, depending on the brand and the category that you are in, where you really don't mind if that person is trying to reach out to you. Yeah. So I mean, just quoting a simple example, the email open rate went 3x when we converted the sender as, we personified the sender as some Ria or someone. So it just jumped it up. So just to come back to your question that, how relevant, how do we control it? Yes, we do control it. But then what is the right number is something we'll have to obviously come to that. So there is an upper limit that somebody will get a certain set of messages in a week's time. But will it going to be 3 or 5? That will depend again on if they have been recent, they have been more frequent with us, they actually are looking for more information. Because many times we get consumer complaints that, I really wanted to buy that product, aapka wo sale aake chala gaya, aapne bataya nahi. So sometimes it is also the case of erring on the right side. Ki zyada bata do, let them choose it. And many of them do it also.
Is it relevant anymore, loyalty programs at all? I mean, do consumers really see a value in them at all?
See, they are relevant, but maybe the points are not worth enough, right?
That's too much points.
Yeah, that's possibly the reality of loyalty points or loyalty programs today. But I think another lens to look at this whole loyalty program is this whole thing around gamification, right? I think and the way we are calling it is essentially gamification is loyalty reborn. To a great extent. Like if you're not gamifying the whole element of the way I'm getting points, the way I'm getting some of these incentives, I think the consumers tend to lose interest and they don't see what they're finally going to get as value. And which is where there's this famous example. Some of you might have already heard of this app called as Pin Duo Duo. In China, it's a grocery app. They kind of took their daily active users from about 1 million to roughly about 10 to 11 million just by building a gamified version of loyalty program. And what they essentially did is they built a Farmville like game, right? Most of us played Farmville. So they built a Farmville like game within their app. Where essentially if you launch the app every day, you get a water droplet. If you refer a friend, you get a water droplet. You purchase, you get water droplets, and so on and so forth. And you choose the kind of fruit the plant that you want to build, right? It's an apple, mango, or whatever plant that you want to build. And the more water droplets you get, of course, the tree, it becomes a tree. And then you invite your friends. So you want to compete whose tree is bigger and stuff like that. And then finally, once the tree is of an X size, they actually ship you a dozen of apples to your place once the tree is of a size of whatever limit they've defined. So they kind of build Farmville into, but the prices are actual, and that's what got users to come into the app every day, and finally buy grocery every day also, because they're on top of the mind. So that's how I think that's where the whole loyalty as a system is moving towards.
Interestingly, we actually at PwC we're working on a loyalty strategy very recently, and some of the things that we understood, or rather when we touch base with consumers, what we heard was couple of loyalty programs that they're very happy with, or feel that brings value. One of the ones that they talked most about was Amex. In fact, even today, Amex is considered much higher at a much higher level as opposed to any other loyalty program, whether it's hospitality, travel, or FMCG. So, considering all of that, and of course, that is again a very specific and a very captive kind of an audience. But looking at it from the perspective of the upcoming generation, and I'm talking the younger generation, whose brand loyalty is very fickle, to say the least. And it's not fickle because they're not loyal. It's fickle because they have very high expectations of brands. So how would you kind of manage those consumer base to make sure that they kind of get their loyalty?
See, first of all, I think this loyalty might be misleading. It's not one brand loyalty these days. It's a multi-brand loyalty. And see, this younger generation is so experimentative. I think for them, in order to win their loyalty, so to speak, at least in our industry, the consumer experience has to be really superlative, and there is no room for error itself. Now, the example you're giving, which is Amex, I think their whole ecosystem is built around loyalty, actually. The kind of people they get into the fold, the kind of services they give, they charge for it also, and hence that loyalty doesn't come free of cost. You actually pay for being loyal to Amex. If I were to look at it this way, in our D2C kind of a thing, I think this loyalty, I would say customer retention, if they are coming and buying you, rather than trying to collect points to see how much our point structure or this thing, we also need to be creative around what the example what Avadhoot was saying, that is there something equivalent which is not just points collection. I think that's a different ball game. But I would say that for us, the loyalty is about, I would rather invest a lot of my energy if they come and buy more products, different kind of products from us, rather than just focusing on how many points have they been able to collect or something.
Yeah.
I think that is something it's not going to be even worth it right now for us.
So would you say that in case of the youngsters, that things like sustainability, sustainable fashion, for example, vegan, cruelty-free, these have a much bigger and much bigger draw as opposed to
see, they are being spoken about, right? Like in my one of my friends used to say that a lot of these are trends between Bandra West and Juhu, and they don't travel beyond that. But I think they are happening to travel. The younger generation, if they perhaps will not choose a brand basis this as of today, but since most of our globalization is westernization, so I suspect that these things will come into play a bit more. Yeah. Like what I'm saying, like one of the things that we were just discussing a couple of days back was, Pilgrim is a no toxin brand. There are some 20 toxins that we have identified which we don't use. We are a vegan brand. We don't do any animal testing and all of that. Many of our youngsters, what we have seen through our feedback, that plastic positive and that not using toxin, actually they like that element of it.
Yeah.
Now that may not be the deal breaker, but I think that really puts the brand in a very positive light. And if you say that where does it go back? It goes back into loyalty, buying, word of mouth, everything. What they want is that it's good for me and it is good for planet also. And this thing is going to increase.
Yeah.
This thing is definitely, my daughter is talking about this, is it recyclable?
And I completely second that. I think that possibly is the only chord with the younger generation, and I'd like to believe I'm in the younger generation. But the fact that I think I think you mentioned about this whole no plastic and some of those. The other aspect to it, like you can't always have that type of product, let's say, but maybe in such cases you could do partnerships or tie-ups. Like let's say there is this organization around grow a billion trees, right? So, possibly you do 5 purchases and we'll plant whatever 10 trees or stuff like that. I think those are things.
No, so there is an interesting program that we are exploring. We haven't still joined the dots, which is the refills. The same bottle can be refilled so that we don't make, we'll give you, we'll pass on the benefit. Don't worry that you're just paying the same thing. But I think that's a very interesting global phenomenon which is happening, which is that why do you have to throw your empty shampoo bottle away when, all you care about is what is inside. The pump works, the branding is still there and all of that. So I think those are some interesting things which are very, very small micro trend. But I think in the times to come, they should take the shape because it's good for us.
Yeah, in fact, Lush Cosmetics is probably the one that did that a lot. I mean, you could actually take an empty pot of whatever the cream or the shampoo or whatever, go back to Lush, and they would just they'll give you a discount on the product as well.
But just on that, many of these ideas should not be a tick in the box. It has to be done in a very strategic manner. If you're dying on profitability, you're not going to plant 2 plants. I'm just making it very clear. That purpose-led branding, it has to run. It has to run deeper and very well integrated so that there is no contradiction in your P&L versus doing this nice thing.
Right.
It has to get into the P&L so that it is a sustainable idea that you are doing. Otherwise, it's a photo op.
How do you kind of ensure that the feedback that you're getting is genuine? And how can you kind of make sure that, because that feedback is going to be important for you since it goes back into your product.
Yeah. So I think it being closer to the transaction that's happened is of course important. Otherwise it loses importance, like you rightly said. The other good aspect of this whole capturing feedback is the fact that life is becoming a little more easier. Where users don't necessarily have to come to your website or app to do a lot of that. A lot of that feedback can be captured over a WhatsApp message or over an AMP email, if some of you have heard of it, right? Where the email itself acts like a form, where you can fill in 3 steps, 4 steps, and have multiple stages within it. And that's about it. So lesser steps, just 3 clicks for a consumer compared to a click to an app load to something, right? So I think life is becoming easier for you to capture feedbacks, be it over WhatsApps, emails, or even app notifications. Like app notifications are becoming clickable, where you can just do a hard press and then give in feedback right there itself. So I think and being closer to transaction is important, like I said earlier. But I think over these hotlines, we call them hotlines to reach your customer, which is your messaging channels. Capturing feedback over them, I think, is the best way to kind of do it.
But what about like you mentioned, using digital footprint to personalize? Similarly, understanding consumer behavior vis-a-vis a particular product, for example, right? And to see where the product's selling, not selling, and if it's selling as per what you had envisioned. How do you kind of use that data to go back and see how you can improve it?
No, very important. So, so we closely monitor the SKUs that get launched, and there is something called as a 3-month sort of a performance, and we continuously keep getting the feedback from the users. We get there, we have the data, who all are using those kind of products, and we stay in touch with them if their experience has been good, and if there has been any drawback in or anything that they like, basically. So that keeps getting recorded on a very in a timely manner, and it has really helped us in changing some of our products dramatically, or discontinuing also when they felt that this is not what they were looking for. So this consumer feedback for the kind of products that we have is absolutely essential.
Yeah.
Without this, it will be very difficult to churn out the new SKUs, and it is important also to keep trimming your long chain SKUs, which keep getting accumulated over a period of time. They absorb a lot of working capital, and also they lead to bad goods and all of that. So in our part of the industry, getting this feedback, especially for the new products, it's absolutely essential.
I think we have to wrap up, so I'm just going to quickly go around the block. So, Saunak, first, what would a few of the tips be from your side that you would recommend while tailoring your strategy, retention strategy? What are a few basic things that we?
I think I'd customize it to the area which we are in, and it doesn't cut through. That's one thing which I'd like to give a disclaimer right at the onset. But it's primarily about data and tech, and that's the game which most of the at least the platforms are in the business of. We're in the business of customers, how best to understand them using data, and how to use tech to deliver the right set of personalized experiences to them. I think that's all I'd need to.
Avadhoot?
I would say with maybe 2 points. One being there's this whole concept of 3 R's basically. So focusing on retention, referrals, and reactivation. I think those are if you get them right, you can cut down a lot of ad waste. Spend 50% of that ad tech budget over here. Which essentially give more to your existing customers. Who can then in turn give you referrals and stuff like that. And the second, I would say there's this famous author called Fred who brought this concept of earned growth. So essentially earned growth is nothing but the amount of revenue you're able to generate from referrals from your existing customers, and the amount of additional revenue you're able to get from your existing customers. It's a combination of that. So measuring earned growth, and not just measuring CAC, becomes important for brands, because if you start measuring it, you'll want to improve it. And if you improve it, I'm sure you'll not want to spend as much and get hooked and focus on kind of making your existing customers hooked to you as a brand. So I would say those 2 things.
Yeah, and obviously, it's easier to retain a customer as opposed to get them back.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's since you mentioned that, I think in general, what we've seen is whenever you acquire a customer, the amount or the amount you spend on Facebook, Google, you get generally 2 or 3 times of that revenue. But if you focus on your existing customers, the revenue, if you essentially spend the same amount on existing customers, you get almost a 5-6 time return. And this is a proven number. It's just that it's about making sure that you don't spend on ad tech, but spend a lot more on retention.
See, I think, like I said, we follow a very simple model, RFM. It's recency, frequency, and the monetary value. And then there are multiple buckets that we have created. So giving you a simple example, most recent, highly frequent, high value, to me is the most important customer bucket. These guys, we go after them because they are the ones who are going to give us fantastic revenue. And like this, there are some multiple combinations where you can customize the the retention strategy bases this. Now, each one to their own. This is one of the proven models, so to speak. But there comes a time where you have to, like I was saying in the beginning, that you have to take a cut-off date. If a customer is not repeated with you over a period of time, you will have to let that customer go and not invest your valuable resources behind it. The most recent ones are the ones easier to kind of tackle, and as and when they keep going further away from purchasing, then it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, I think that's a wrap then. Thank you so much, all three of you, for being here, and thanks a lot for having us here.